The other day, I was bored at home and wanted to go for a walk. While strolling down the street, a secondhand bookstore caught my eye. I went in and started browsing the books one by one. As I was going through them, an old dusty book in the corner of a shelf caught my attention. I picked it up and began examining it. In the preface, one sentence stood out to me. Capital is not earned, it is protected. Everything else is empty words and nonsense. That sentence moved me deeply, and I decided to buy the book and read it. I was 30 years old that day. 4 years had passed since I founded my textile factory, and business was going very well. I will probably never forget that day for the rest of my life. The book had drawn me in completely. I don't even know how I read it in one sitting. Now I'm going to tell you about the lesson that book taught me that day. I can say that I've dedicated my life to learning the world of finance and providing a more comfortable life for both myself and my family. By the time I turned 26, I had established my factory. At 30, I experienced a currency crisis and lost $200,000. Those 4 years became what I would call my turning point. I was doing million-dollar deals with some of Germany's biggest companies, and my factory was growing rapidly. I had practically become intoxicated by power. But there was one thing I had overlooked. Earning money and managing money are entirely different concepts. The book I read was about managing money. Most people know how to make money, but they have no idea how to manage what they have earned. Can you answer this question? Why are you earning money? Or what will you do with it once you've earned it? Where and how will you spend it? Or where will you stop? Today, I'm going to explain exactly that. Rule 1. Never touch the principal. I'm going to ask you how much of your monthly income you set aside for investment. I'm not even entertaining the possibility that you don't invest at all. If that's the case, then the situation is far worse than we might think. Now, when you hear the word investment, what comes to mind? Crypto, the stock market, real estate, or something else I haven't mentioned? I see most people online acting impatiently when it comes to investing, rushing to buy and sell, acting recklessly during turbulent market periods. Some even end up buying high and selling low, losing money in the process. Friends, what you're doing is not investing. It's gambling, and gambling doesn't make you money. It loses it. A dear friend of mine once said, in gambling, it's not the player who wins, it's the house. Engrave that in your mind. If you've understood that well enough, I can offer you a roadmap to follow. In the old understanding of money, there is a concept called principle. Unfortunately, I learned about it only after experiencing the currency crisis. I wish I had learned it sooner, but there's no fixing the past. Here's how it works. You set aside a portion of your income as principal. No matter what emergency arises, whether the market crashes, whether you have cash flow problems, whether you face any challenge you can think of, you must never touch this money. Understanding this in theory is easy. Applying it is quite difficult. I earned my first big money 2 years after founding my factory when I signed an export agreement with a German company. I remember that day. I spent part of what I received and set part of it aside, but I didn't know why I was setting it aside or what logic was behind it. There was no business plan, no investment strategy. The money just sat there on its own. Then the currency crisis hit, and I wanted to use that money. But it had already eroded because the principle of don't touch the principal had never taken root in my life. The market made me pay a very bitter price for that mistake. One evening I came home, showered, had dinner, and was drinking my evening coffee while making plans about my business. A rule I had learned at the factory came to mind. If you violate cash flow rules, the business dies. That rule applied equally to personal finance, but learning it cost me dearly. Here's my advice. Make a decision. Define a pool in your portfolio and name it principal. Then forget about it. Do this consistently every month. You can even open a separate account so you're less tempted. Once you transfer the money, log out of the account because you can't spend what you can't access. Of course, this requires serious willpower and discipline. The first week, you'll keep checking your account. The first month, you'll be fighting the urge to spend. But by the end of the 6th month, you'll have broken free of those impulses. Your mindset will shift 180 degrees because by then you'll know compound interest works when you're not watching it. I've given you my advice. Whether you follow it is entirely up to you. Now let's move on to the second rule. Rule 2. Your income is not your identity. I have a habit of observing the people around me. When I moved to Dubai to expand my network, I put this habit to even greater use. You know Dubai, one of the favorite cities of the wealthy. But what I was curious about was, are these people actually rich or are they just pretending to be? Because being admired and seen as impressive is appealing to everyone. But there's a fundamental difference. One person is stretching their financial limits to appear wealthy, while the other is genuinely in that position and doesn't need to strain at all. Let me tell you about 2 different types of people: real wealthy and fake wealthy. Poor people have limited income and limited options. When their income stalls, their already scarce options disappear entirely. For those who live off their wealth, this isn't a concern. Even if their income slows, they have dozens of alternatives. When my factory was generating over $20 million in annual revenue, certain questions used to surface in my mind. Why does this money exist? To drive a better car, for security, or for show? My uncle earns $91,000 a year. He recently bought a brand new BMW and brags about the monthly payments. But underneath, I sensed a quiet remorse. He's stretching his finances to chase approval, and he's trapped himself in that cycle. A business owner I sell products to recently moved to a more upscale neighborhood, dressing it up as investing in myself. But what he doesn't see is that the building isn't appreciating in value, rent is flowing out, and his budget is shrinking. As my factory grew, so did my income, and with it, my social standing. And naturally, expectations grew too. Everyone expected me to drive the latest car, live in the finest mansion. But the question gnawing at my mind was, is this spending for me, or is it telling others who I am in their eyes? Answering that question honestly requires a great deal of courage, because most of the time, the answer is the second option, and that bruises the ego. I want to say this clearly. Cash does not tolerate showiness. Every penny you spend on appearances is a step blocking your growth. The watch on my wrist is something anyone from any income level could wear. I don't wear a watch worth thousands of dollars because there's no need. The day you stop needing approval is the day you feel truly free. Rule 3, guard your name better than your capital. Everyone is talking about the same thing these days: personal brand. Share your identity, your achievements, put them on display. Most people love doing this because being approved of feels good to everyone. Old money says the exact opposite. Old money defines identity differently. Your identity is what people think of you when you're not in the room. Can I trust this person? In other words, your reputation. The answer to that question is far more solid and far more enduring than any brand. Betraying someone's trust damages your identity. Breaking the terms of a deal damages your identity. I could give you many more examples, but I think those are enough to make the point. Years ago, I received a business offer worth $20,000. At the time, that was a very large sum for me, but I looked into the person making the offer, asked around among people I knew, and what I heard wasn't reassuring. They said he deceived people, didn't pay on time, and so on. So I had to turn the offer down. Not long after, Through a friend, I went to dinner to discuss a new business arrangement. My friend introduced me to the man who had come to work together. They were friends, as it turned out. Anyway, there was a problem that needed to be solved, and I was the one to solve it. We agreed on $30,000. I completed the work, got paid, and the other party was satisfied. The lesson I want you to take from this: at that time, I wasn't a well-known figure. I didn't have an impressive LinkedIn profile. I got the job simply because a friend recommended me. I did good work. The other party was happy. That day, one person was satisfied with me. Imagine a few more situations like that. Over time, 5 people, 10 people, 20 people walk away happy. That is how reputation is built. I experienced something similar during my factory's growth. German companies didn't want to work with an American businessman. They told me their reservations weren't personal, but shared the difficulties they'd experienced. In their own way, they were right, but I made them a promise, and I didn't let them down. I delivered their goods on time. I never sold defective merchandise. They paid on time in return. We've now been working together for about 10 years, and it didn't stop there. Through them, I met various other companies and conducted million-dollar deals. That is how a network is built. I gave this a name of my own: identity working with compound interest. Would you want people talking badly about you behind your back, cursing you? Would you want to be called a swindler, a thief, or a liar? Probably not. And that goes for all of us. So let's protect our reputation. Rule 4: time cannot be reclaimed. We are strange creatures. We don't appreciate what we have until something bad happens to us. When the currency crisis erupted, my entire perspective on the financial world shifted dramatically. Whether it's the stock market, real estate, or currency risk, whatever comes to mind, if there's a problem at the core, it's not a lack of information. It's a lack of perspective. I won't lie. In my younger years, I wanted to get rich fast. I still think about how to grow my wealth more quickly. It's an impulse that comes from within. But in the real world, that impulse has no legitimate payoff. Wealth is something built over time. Winning $100 or $1,000 in gambling feels far more attractive to most people than opening a business and building a system that generates steady returns. That's wrong. But more importantly, when you let things follow their natural course, when you stop rushing to make money and focus on living your life, your risk of failure decreases. You become happier, and your chances of building lasting wealth actually increase. After I realized this, I stood in front of the mirror and asked myself, how long can I hold on to this investment? The answer to that question helped me make far more rational decisions. I became more rational. I learned patience. I learned to be curious about things others weren't paying attention to, and I learned to manage the process during a crisis. Imagine a small shop in a modest neighborhood, the kind a photographer wouldn't choose, the kind people don't get excited about. Clean cap rate, reliable tenants, nothing else remarkable. I once lived in the apartment above exactly that kind of shop. I still pass by from time to time, and it catches my eye. It has a tenant, and its value is slowly, quietly growing. Will your investments provide a positive contribution during dangerous times like an economic crisis? Your answer to that question can give you a clue about which direction you're climbing in the financial world. Because for someone with a long horizon, what might look like a mistake sometimes leads to exactly the right outcome. Imagine one of your investments brings in $50,000 in 12 months. What would your reaction be? Would you jump for joy like a child, or would you watch your money with calm composure? Know this: if you're wildly excited, it means your subconscious believes you don't deserve that gain. One more thing: The concept of time is a more valuable asset than money. Last year, I was so busy I could barely keep up with things. Several business offers came in one after another, and I had to turn most of them down simply because I didn't have the time. I spent the time I would have given to them on finding answers to two questions. How can I use my time more efficiently? And how can I accomplish more in less time? Rule 5. Stop counting, stop showing off. Let me ask you something. Imagine you've reached $1 million in wealth. What do? Do you say this is enough and stay where you are? Do you show it off? Or do you keep building? In the age of social media, most people choose option 2. At least that's what I see around me. But old money is opposed to that way of living. The moment you advertise your assets, the flow of your life changes. People start expecting things from you. Maybe fake friendships, fake relationships, maybe an old colleague trying to reprice you. In short, you attract self-interested people into your orbit, and they drain your energy. I felt this firsthand as my factory began to grow. I had a name. People spoke of me with admiration. Their attitudes toward me shifted 180 degrees. Many people approached me with the mentality of, this guy has money. Let's get a piece of it. Trying to build a false closeness. That's why staying discreet isn't a choice. It's a necessity for self-protection. I've observed something across generations of wealthy families. You can't learn much about them unless you ask directly. No one knows how much wealth they have, who they're connected to. Some call it humble living, but I believe it's a tactical move. Those who put their wealth on display attract extra attention. And when all eyes are on you, your margin for error shrinks. You start performing a tense, curated version of life. You stop being natural, and that drains your energy. The watch on my wrist is worth around $400. I've been wearing it happily for a few years. Sometimes I think maybe it's time for a change. It's been a while, but I love my watch, and I don't feel the need. I have no obligation to prove myself to anyone with a $10,000 or $20,000 watch. You know, the financial world doesn't like haste. So I've set a rule for myself. I evaluate my portfolio on a quarterly basis. I'm not like those people who obsessively check their holdings every hour of every day. When a crisis comes, I know how to stay calm because impatience leads to poor decisions and unnecessary stress. After all of this, I remember the day my father said goodbye to our family. He left behind a small textile workshop, our family's only source of income. I was 18 years old at the time, struggling with financial hardship. Banks wouldn't give me credit. Companies didn't take me seriously. But I didn't give up. I worked, I pushed forward. Within 8 years, I had grown enough to open my first factory. Of course, I had just opened the factory. I was in the middle of another fight. No customer base, little room for error, limited capital, debts. Sleepless, stressful nights. My days were filled with anxiety about how to grow the business. For 2 years, we did small, modest jobs. Then a serious offer came from a German company. The money from that deal would meaningfully ease my cash flow. I gave everything I had to that work, delivered the goods, received my payment, and they were satisfied. They began recommending me to people in their network. From that day on, I started to breathe a little easier. I wasn't earning a lot, but I had no cash shortage either. Then, at 30, an unexpected currency crisis hit. I lost $200,000. I was so devastated that I couldn't sleep all night from the stress. I realized I needed to approach things with much greater caution. That currency crisis, I can say, was my true turning point. The hardships I endured helped me build a strong, resilient character that doesn't know how to quit. Today, 340 people work under me at my factory. We generate an average of $50 million in revenue annually. I tried to share a portion of my experiences with you, hoping they might be of some use, because I didn't want you to have to walk the same difficult road I walked. I want you to take what you've learned here and apply it in practice. Live a life that satisfies you, not one designed to please others. Learn to rein in your emotions. Make decisions as rationally as you can. We all have dreams. Whatever happens, fight as hard as you can to make them real. Never give up. As a final note, everything shared here is based solely on my personal experiences in the financial world and does not constitute investment advice. When making financial decisions, don't forget to consult a financial professional.